Welcome to BMI Redefined with Jen and Mo. Let's do this.
Oh yeah, let's do this.
Hey everybody.
Hello.
Welcome back to BMI Redefined with
Jen.
and Mo.
Hello.
Yay. So we are continuing our series on the age of anxiety through Time Magazine. And the first episode dealt with the introduction of navigating anxiety. And the next one episode that we did was defining the disorder. And now here today, we are talking about, are the kids all right?
Yes, big topic for today, Mo.
You know, the first thing we're going to be talking about is the chapter that says, relax. It's only a test. How many times have you heard that?
Oh gosh, yes.
Right?
Well, I mean, yeah, and just thinking about test-taking anxiety, that kind of thing. And I think you and I were talking about the other day when I'm working as a teacher and you walk into a classroom, you can tell from the second you walk through that door whether or not there was a test that had just been taken in that room. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's just a stress, there's an angst that's just in the atmosphere. And I'm not just making that up.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
No, that's true. That's true. Well, you know, I think that too, you know, I was actually talking to someone today and they said, you know, there's more to cope with now than there was in the past.
Right.
And one of those things is I think teachers are more anxious in the classroom. And we didn't talk about that. I didn't bring that up to you. So I might be throwing you for a loop right now.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
But I think that it's, you know, frequently high stakes, right? Exams have become normal. And if your students don't perform, then you could possibly get written up. You could possibly be fired because you aren't performing to make sure that those students are passing those tests.
Right. Well, and actually, kind of what we say is teaching to the test. You know exactly what do they need to know.
Right.
And that falls into a lot of curriculum decisions these days.
And that pressure that's put on to the teachers, I believe, is also passed on to the students.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right? And, you know, test anxiety has really risen in the past 20 years when this came into
existence. Well, and there have been some researchers, Lisa DeMoore out of Ohio and the Laurel School for Girls is talking about some of the techniques that can be used to try to reduce some of this anxiety in the test taking. And one of the things that they were talking about in an article that she was quoted in was about this expressive writing. So if we're talking about, you know, what do you do? We talked about walking into the room and, oh my God, you're feeling, I'll have a test coming up. So that intervention called expressive writing, I wish I had known about this. So about 10 minutes before your test, instead of doing like the brain dump the minute you're handed the test paper, that's what I always do, is write down all my keywords and acronyms and everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
But even before then, like a few minutes before the test, just sit down and write about how you're feeling. And she says you think that would have the effect of increasing your stress, but actually it helps to just kind of journal it out, if you will. I have a test in a few minutes. I'm feeling a little anxious about this, and I don't know if I prepared the right way. I mean, just getting all that out actually helped raise test scores when they used that intervention.
Right. And a lot of journaling is that. People who are in the health field, they say, well, journal in the morning just to get everything out, and then you have a fresh slate for the day, you know? And so, yeah, I agree with that. It is a way to creatively express your feelings, right? And it's a safe way to do that.
Right.
And to communicate them, you know.
Well, and one thing, and that helps with what in the training field we call self-limiting behavior, where, you know, no, I can't lift that, or no, it's always I can't do this, that, or the other. And we'll say, well, really, that's in your mind. And trainers have gotten through to me so many times on that aspect where, you know, because of my car wreck or whatever was going on, I was like, no, I can't do that. Well, Jenny, you just did da-da-da-da. You ran or you did whatever. Of course you can do that. And so John and I have many conversations along that line because
John,
it's
your trainer.
My trainer, right? Yeah, because of my own self-limiting behavior. And I find that in clients as well.
In this article, they also said that, you know, stereotypes, like girls and you and I have both experienced this. Well, girls, they can't do math. You know, and my mom was even like, well, I can't help you with that math because I was never good at math. So then that, after years of saying that, that translates to me. And you know what I mean?
Self-perpetuating.
Yeah.
Well, and then Lisa was talking about, and also a gentleman named Cyan Balak, also a cognitive scientist, talked about working with students to help them, what he says, get out of their own way. You know, try to reduce that self-limiting behavior or those thoughts, saying, well, I haven't done well in this class and this test is not going to go well. Well, we don't know that, you know, and it's that get out of our own way. And I like that phrase. We just need to get out of our own way. Because we can probably be more successful in the endeavor we're about to pursue if we would just attack what we need to attack rather than attack ourselves.
Right. Yeah. We get in our way a lot.
Yeah, I think we all do.
Yeah, we all do. Yeah.
Also, Demore, Lisa said, and I like this because I would like to utilize this idea in other areas of my life, including getting ready for like our podcast and stuff. But pretend that test day or prior to test day, have a dress rehearsal. Yeah, just like you would for a school play or whatever you're doing, or a recital or whatever. And so just have a dress rehearsal. And one thing I do as a speaker or a trainer, I like to go see the venue, and I'm sure you do too. You like to see where you're going to perform before you go there. So you have a picture in your head of what it's going to look like, and then you kind of role play through what it's going to look like when you get there. Right. So actually have a test-taking dress rehearsal where you're sitting at your desk, it's a quiet room, or if you know there's people walking up and down the hall, have a little background noise or whatever going on, and just go through it like it's a timed test, a timed experience. Right. So, and that's actually, I guess we do that as teachers and our jobs anyway, is we have only so much time to get the job done. Right. So just go ahead and apply that to a test-taking situation. Right. Anyway, but that was a good idea that Lisa had come up with. Yeah, that's a very good idea, actually. I like that. And, and we do that, especially, like you said, for shows and things. And PowerPoint presentations. You go through those PowerPoints to make sure that you have rehearsed it and practiced it, and then you go do it. So, yeah. So just apply that technique to test taking. To test taking, exactly. Yeah. So then I think we moved into talking about gender differences, right? Within the Time Research Journal here, and the girls and boys and how they prepare differently. So you want to talk a little bit about that? We talked about some different learning styles. Yeah, and there are girls' approach to school. I think the biggest thing is should not be driven by fear, right? I mean, that's what this article points out, that it should create a beautiful learning environment, just like many for the boys. And I don't know, I tend to, gender roles. What did you think when you were reading this? Big topic. Because here's the deal. Yeah. There are girls who acted like, when they were talking this article, like the boys. And I know some boys who are acting like, the girls in this. Well, and let's kind of define what we're talking about there. So in the article, they talked about the boys performing well on tests and all that, but their stress levels were lower. Right, in general, and on these students that they were looking at. And there wasn't a lot of drama around it. No, and they call it tactical learning? Tactical learning, where it's more efficient. And so, and you and I were just thinking about different examples of males and females in our lives, just thinking about how they would approach studying. And a lot of times, we have friends, or we ourselves would kind of over-prepare, that kind of thing. And so here's my other question. If they don't feel that it can be perfect, then do they just abandon it? It was interesting, the story that they said in here, that this girl and her brother, and they both were great students, but her brother hardly studied. He did study, but in her eyes, he hardly studied. She, on the other hand, would study all of her subjects every single night, 2 hours devoted to each subject. And she wasn't done until like 1 or 2 in the morning.
even if she didn't have anything to do, she would still work on that. Now that's a perfectionist. I would never do that.
Well,
and I'm a girl.
And didn't they say they had similar grades?
And they had similar grades.
Yes.
So when I brought that up in the beginning about gender,
Yeah.
I'm kind of talking about myself because I will find the least way to get it done.
The least path of resistance.
Right. Right?
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Actually, we recently took a personality test, and we found Myers-Briggs that we both have pretty much the
do.
same personality.
They're the same personality. Oh my God.
That's scary.
It is scary. Yeah.
Well, and it's and it's the amount of effort that's expended, by each student, each child, and it's interesting how adults enter the conversation as well. Because one of the researchers talked about that too is when the adults join the conversation about study habits and that kind of thing, and compare their children to themselves or what have you. That just doesn't, unless it's very encouraging, it doesn't typically end well when you start comparing like that. Either you're comparing her to her brother, or you're coming in comparing her to yourself, or him to yourself, whatever. And so just trying to figure out that I guess you can't cookie cutter any of this, really.
No.
That they're all unique.
Right.
And that they're going to approach test anxiety differently. You just have to take it case by case.
And there's some, there's some kids who are just quiet. And they're not going to say anything. And so you have to, as a parent, you have to know, okay, what's going on. You have to be aware.
Oh, yeah. Awareness is key.
Awareness is key, right? And to let them know. To say, okay, so, did you get this done tonight? Yeah, I got it done. Okay. And then you have to, there's some point where you have to trust that they're going to get what they need done.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Trust.
And that the anxiety level that they may feel, that you can help them and talk to them about it, but don't talk to them, crazy about it all the time.
Well,
because that'll make them stressed out even more.
Right. And
just
not
let them know you're there.
Right. Let them know you're there.
Yeah.
Be confidence building.
Right.
Not condescending.
Right.
That kind of thing. And just try to help
Them
grow.
through that.
Yeah. Help them grow through this experience rather than cut them down.
Right. Exactly.
So next in this lineup of research, the new way to prevent anxiety in kids, like in younger children. And that gets back into a topic we talked about early on.
Yeah, the cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah.
And, and I think that you could use this in teenagers as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, I had to get a drink of water.
Well, and it talked about here, the researchers are developing programs for shy preschool children, and they say who might be a greater risk of developing anxiety. But, in this particular journal article you and I are looking at, I kind of started that and I was making some notes, and you and I talked about, the pandemic, that's a whole nother layer that's entered this.
It is.
And these journals, as we said, came out during this pandemic time. So,
right.
Time Magazine was way ahead of, their research was way ahead of all this. But still, that's a whole nother layer or thread or whatever you want to call it that comes through all this learning, is bringing in virtual learning into the mix.
Right.
So, whatever anxiety you might have about stepping into a classroom, so that like the first day of class, bricks and mortar classroom versus the first day of class on virtual learning, that's a different
beast.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So I wanted to bring up parents. Parents of anxious kids. It's real.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to read a little quote in here that was written by, who's the author of this one? Andrea Peterson. And she says, parents of anxious kids often become controlling and overprotective in an attempt to ease their children's distress. The trouble is, this sends the message that the world is a dangerous place and kids can't cope with it on their own. We protect so much right now. This is my own personal opinion. My own personal opinion, so I don't want to say this is Ginny's opinion or anything. This is my own personal opinion. But I think that there is a lot of overprotection, and I think we're screwing up kids.
Mm-hmm.
I just do. Now, there are some cases where you have to be protective, like if your child, has, learning disorders and, things like that. But when your child is, has every opportunity afforded to him or her, and you're protecting so much, you are doing a disservice to that child.
Like the helicopter.
Like the helicopter parents.
Yeah.
Right.
That just seem to always be there.
Yeah,
But, you can be there in a good way, in a supportive way, but you can be there in an overbearing way as well.
Right.
And that's not confidence building
No.
for the child. It's actually making them think that they can't do it.
Right. Or that they don't want to do it because the expectations are making them so freaked out that they just forget it. I'm not doing anything.
Yeah, that they won't ever rise to the expectations of their...
Because they're like, why? If they expect this from me, and if they want this from me, what if they're disappointed? So I'm not even going to try.
That's insightful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there's a way of encouraging instead of pushing.
Yes. Well, and that's, being supportive rather than pushy. And and we've all,
And sometimes you just have to wait for your
We've all
kids
seen
to come to you.
Yeah.
To say, hey, you say, I'm here for you if you need anything, and just let them know that they have a place to go, a safe place to land if they're trying to spread their wings, and not a place where if they spread their wings and they fail and you're like, told you so. I told you that wasn't a good idea. I told you that was bad. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I know exactly what you mean. And that's really where we're coming from on this whole time research
Right.
that we're looking into here is, how do you build up? How do you lift the children up, lift up their confidence? How do you boost their confidence in a concerted manner, rightfully so, not just to give them false hopes or whatever, but to truly build them up to where they are ready for success.
Right.
In whatever they're working toward, whether it's academic or otherwise.
Right.
So that's been very, very interesting just reading what some of these researchers have to say. And another part of this particular article is talking about how researchers are developing programs for shy children, even at the preschool level.
Yes.
And they say they're in greater risk of developing anxiety. And then, as we've talked about, this whole research series was coming out during this pandemic time that we're all experiencing. And that's a whole nother thread through all this as well, as far as this virtual learning platform that all the children are experiencing, but then we're all working with virtual platforms right now on whatever we're doing. So that's a whole nother, I don't want to say source of anxiety, but another venue that anxiety could develop unless it's mitigated or harnessed to start with.
Well, right. That's true. And they're doing this with, children as early as 3 and 4, trying to, kids who are behaviorally inhibited and have poor social skills, being rejected by their peers and being really shy, like you said, they are really internalizing those negative feelings. So the question is, the researchers, and especially there's this Andrea Cronus Toscano. She was a principal investigator in this article. And she said that we're trying to interrupt that whole process. Yeah. Trying to, not necessarily ignore anxious behavior and to avoid it, but to really embrace it.
Well, she talked about part of the study where they had circle time for the preschoolers in one room and the parents were across the hall.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
learning how to, you know, address the anxious and the avoidant behavior, and also but praise brave behavior. You know,
Right,
and so the parents were in a learning environment as well.
Right.
You know, it was a neat study that they worked on.
Yeah, they had like little earpieces, like Secret Service, right, style, and you know, and researchers have found that the phobias, you know, or these you know, anxiety issues that they have, you know, they need to embrace them at some point, because if they don't, then it's going to develop other anxiety disorders and probably depression. Anxiety and depression go hand in hand many times.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, we've talked about that in previous episodes about, you know, anxiety looking toward the future and depression being something that you're thinking about from the past. And so, but they do go hand in hand and in the psyche.
And sometimes, you know, kids mask the anxiety with that false bravado. Oh, I can do anything, and I can do this, and I can do that. You know, really.
Well, but there could be some insecurity.
Right.
That's
exactly. Well, that's what it is. That false bravado. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know.
Well, that was interesting. Just looking at it from a preschooler standpoint, and how parents can jump into the process from the beginning, and try to help resolve and reduce some of the anxiety that's happening in the children's minds.
Right.
So then we come to Lisa D'Amour's work in this research journal about how to talk about teen angst. So it can be stressful for parents. Too, one psychologist and mom explains the many shades of adolescent anxiety and how to help an apprehensive child.
Yeah.
Lisa D'Amour. So, and it's interesting, as we talked about some of the work that she done earlier as well, but you know, that the teenage mind is
a scary place.
There's a lot going on.
There is.
I mean,
do you remember when you were a teenager?
Yes.
Oh, me too.
I go back to I played a lot of softball.
Yeah.
If anybody would go have a catch, let's go play. I need to throw something at somebody. So
interesting. That's where that learned behavior is from. No, I'm teasing.
It is.
No. Well, you know, and you know, I mean, there are some challenges. I think everybody has challenges in high school. That's where we grow. That's where we learn, right? And she talks about, you know, anxiety disorder, like social anxiety, and then generalized anxiety. And generalized anxiety disorder, you know, a teenager might be, you know, dogged by constant worrying, you know, like, oh, she's such a worrier, you know? You know, things like they miss things like being at home, or will anyone sit with me at lunch? You know, things that, who knows? There might be someone home when you get home. And, you know, many of the kids assume too that, like, it's bad to feel worried, or it's bad to feel tense. It's not, you know, everyone should feel good all the time. And it's so not true.
That's not true.
You know? I mean, anxiety, though, I mean, can help, as we said before, anxiety can be good. It can help you keep safe, right?
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
So avoidance, I mean, it talks about in this particular research article, but avoidance can actually feed anxiety too. You know, we talked about this kind of a little while ago too, about avoiding certain classes or whatever, but that can actually feed anxiety. So, you know, when you're not sure about who's going to be there or what's going to be going on, or, you know, we've all gone on, you know, interviews or whatever, and you think, well, what if there's a lull in the conversation? It's okay if there's a lull in the conversation, or, you know, what if so-and-so is not there? Well, then you talk to somebody else. You know, it's kind of, but it's that unknown that kind of breeds a fear. And then it kind of leads you to thoughts of, well, maybe I should just avoid that whole thing.
Right.
But that's where, you know, CBT and some of this exposure therapy and these other methods come in and help us address that in our head before we even step into that situation. or the child steps into that situation.
Right.
But that's, us adults who've experienced a lot of those situations before can, I won't say give advice, but at least be there in a supportive role, like we were talking about a few seconds ago, and just say, hey, how do you feel about, this new Zoom meeting today, being in the pandemic? We're all virtual learning, so
Right.
what do you think about that? Or that's a new class. What's going on in there? And just taking an interest on what's going on in their lives right now, because their lives look a lot different than they did this time last year.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. And I also think that it's important to let them know that because that takes away some of, if you can, well, I was told once that everything has two sides, right? Everything has two sides, or two ways of doing things, or two or more. And if you can picture yourself in one scenario with the situation, picture yourself in another scenario with the situation, that might take away some of the anxiety, because it shows that you have the ability to see the different sides to the one situation. It will take away some of that anxiousness. But if you feel that you're like stuck with one thing and you're in a corner with it, then that's when you feel pressed, anxious, scared, angry, all those things, And so when we let our kids know, that, okay, it's okay to be nervous in this situation, but what happens? Like if you go to a dance and you're just standing there, okay, what's the worst thing that can possibly happen? Go through worst case scenarios with them. And then when they come home, they're like, well, how was it? Well, it wasn't the worst. Really. So go through worst case scenarios.
Well, and this makes me think of Winona Avenue's Masterpiece song, too. When, the video that we shared in that episode with Winona Avenue, and how, and Daniel and David, and how the girl in that music video had that very thing happen.
Right.
Like she was there all along, and then suddenly she had kind of a change of mind, a change of heart, a change of attitude, and things started, opening up. And she actually walked back into that gym where that dance was, and she saw things differently.
Right.
So anyway, that's just an image that popped in my head.
No, that's good.
From your comment.
No, that's good.
So what about as far as...
Oh, here's another thing.
What?
Putting on your oxygen mask first.
That's what I was going to say.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, parents can help set that emotional tone at home.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so in order to take good care of your teen, you need to take good care of yourself.
Right.
And, if you're feeling steady, then you're less likely to overreact when something happens. Right?
Right.
I think that's my dog.
Like your dog barking. So we're not going to overreact that happening.
No, we're not going to say anything. We're not going to get anxious that Brownie made it onto the podcast.
Yes.
Bark. Okay.
A cameo.
A cameo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
So, well, and we were talking just along the teen angst and how we as adults can be, or as parents can be examples of how to reduce some of the stress. And this kind of came up, and not just because I'm a trainer, but I was researching for another client some work last night, and it's interesting. The National Academy of Sports Medicine had an article that I was reading about reducing angst and anxiety in children and the role of exercise and just lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so, and that's actually a section in this very article that we're talking about. But they had this kind of acronym, with my accounting background, I love acronyms.
Right.
And so do you.
SABA.
Yeah,
Starbucks.
SABA. So, and it's actually, NASM talks about it being well. So the W is well-being, inside and outside. The E in well is for eating and making healthy choices. And the first L is loving our own body and mind and others with our healthy habits. And then the last L in the acronym WELL is longevity. And that's feeling well, and being well will keep us living our best lives even longer. And I thought that's a nice thought, that if we can try to have healthier habits within ourselves and with others, in our family and our what interactions we do have these days, then we'll actually have better longevity,
Yeah.
living our best lives. What do you think about that?
Easier said than done, but yeah.
It's a nice thought.
It's a nice thought. It's
Yeah.
good. No, it's a good thought.
Yeah.
And we should strive,
Yeah, something
For
to work
that.
toward. Absolutely.
right?
But, I mean, just really, I think the bottom line is, like you said, that it's based on personality, how we deal with anxiety, how we deal with stress. A lot, part of it's environmental and how our parents interact with us,
Yep.
what interventions there are in our lives to help
Yes.
us handle anxiety and stress, and our personality types are a big factor
Right.
in how we address those situations.
Right. And and the thing is you can, like, if you're like 50 years old or 29 like yourself,
29, I was waiting for you to say that. Thanks.
there comes a point in time where you have to take responsibility for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You can't blame everything on your parents. And if you have challenges that you're dealing with, then you recognize those challenges and you own those challenges and you work your life, you work those challenges within your life and just say, okay, this is what I have to deal with, but I want to do this. I want to have a successful job, or I want a job.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to have to deal with those challenges and, figure out how I'm going to survive in this world, because ultimately it comes down to us.
Yes, and there will be tests to be taken.
And there will be tests to be taken.
Mm-hmm.
And so you take a deep breath,
Mm-hmm.
and you always take that nice deep breath before anything. And that breath will guide you. If it's an easy breath, it's an easy decision.
That's a good point.
If it's a tough breath, then wait.
Sleep on it.
Sleep on it. Count to 10.
I do that. I count backwards.
I should count to 10. That's part of my problem. So, there you go. Okay, are we done?
I think this has been good. We've really
Yeah.
talked about the children and anxiety
Yeah.
and things that can happen, and relied on the researchers in Time Magazine and their insights and studies that
Yeah.
they've done.
Yeah.
And so next time we will be jumping.
Into lessons and treatments.
Fascinating.
The fastest way to calm down.
Could use that.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
I
On
don't
the
think
money.
coffee's involved.
No.
Probably not.
Likes, follows, and fears.
Social media.
Yep. The case for a digital detox. The healing power of pets. Ooh, we'll have a lot to say about that.
Oh, wait, we should have all our pets here for that.
I know. A spirit. No.
That'd be
There'll
fun.
be like a dog fight. A
Good.
spiritual approach. That will be good. Growing levels of eco-anxiety. Mindful meditation. And 11 natural remedies for anxiety.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be a fun show. No, stop. That's going to be a fun show.
That will be a fun show.
Well, guys, thank you for joining us for BMI Redefined with Jen and
Mo.
And we've had fun. We want to hear from you guys. We want to hear comments. We want to hear ideas. What do you want to hear in some of our future shows?
Right. And reach out to us. Okay. Bye.
Bye.